On your disk you'll find a file called vignette_before.jpg, and once you've opened that up in Photoshop you'll notice that the corners are darker than the rest of the shot, and that also applies down in the bottom left and the bottom right, but it's harder to notice that change of corner darkening because these areas are dark anyway. But when it comes to skies, you can see this vignetting effect, this darkening, quite clearly. But we can correct that as well and end up with a shot with a more correct and consistent exposure, and these darkened corners now have been lightened up to make the shot look less vignetted. Now I say less vignetted because some people actually like adding a vignette effect because they find that this gives a frame to the photograph and draws attention to the main subject in the middle. So the techniques we use to get rid of vignetting can also be used to add it. And I'll show you how to get rid of the vignetting now by going up to Filter, Correct Camera Distortion. If you're using Photoshop CS, then you'll find that the same filter is actually hiding in Distort, and it's called Lens Correction. So the name's different, the location's different, but it does the same job and you'll end up with the same window like so. Now vignetting is just one type of camera distortion or lens distortion, and you can see there's other options as well like perspective control. That's why we have this grid here, but in the vignetting case we don't need the grid because we're not trying to align vertical lines to the edge of the frame, so just turn the grid off because it gets in the way and it doesn't really allow you to see the edits very clearly. So now we can actually see the shot more clearly. We can go to vignette and we can lighten or darken depending on where we drag this slider. So to the left to darken and to the right to lighten. So if you look at the sky, it's not an even exposure anyway. We've got a really overexposed section in the middle here, but the corners are still rather dark compared to the areas just close to them, so we can lighten them up to create a more even exposure here and here. And to do that, let's drag this to the right to a value of around about 41 or so. There we go. And that now gives us a more even exposure here, but it preserves the texture as well. And if we push the midpoint to the right, then that will just stop the vignette from lightening too much of the shot. It will just work on the corners and it will help preserve colour and tone just nearby the corner areas. So around about 76 should do the trick. So when you're happy with your vignette removal, then just click OK to apply the change, and there's the finished version. If I Control Z to undo, you can see the before is quite dramatically different, much darker, especially at the corners. And if I go to Edit, Redo Camera Correction, or Control Y, there's our edited shot. Now, as I said earlier, some people like to add vignettes using correct camera distortion. And why would you need to do that? Well, it adds a border or a frame to the shot, and it also adds a bit of texture and detail to these rather bland areas. So whether you want to add or remove a vignette, correct camera distortion will do the job quite effectively.